Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Inside the Diamonds podcast. This is episode 2. I'm your host, JC, and I'm joined tonight again by CJ. How you doing, CJ?
I'm fantastic. Looking forward to talking some baseball.
Yeah, we've got a jam-packed kind of schedule tonight. We've got a lot going on. We've got a lot going on tonight. We've got a lot for the next pod so that we can get these projections done by division, along with some of the awards we're talking about. But the first thing I want to kind of get with tonight is the spring breakout series. We touched upon it last episode, and we were both kind of excited about it. But I know that I'm not sure it hit expectations for you, and I'm very interested to see what you think and kind of what you saw from it. As I said, I didn't get a chance really just due to the games I wanted to watch seemed to be shortened and a little bit disappointing. So why don't you kind of fill us in on what you took from it and how well it was run?
I thought it was fantastic. One thing I didn't like was the aspect of the 7 innings. Some teams agreed to play 9, but the rule was to just do 7. Which, how are you showcasing anything if you're gonna have a roster with 8, 9 pitchers on it if you're doing 7 innings? That was one thing. I watched Orioles Pirates. I had Friday was a washout. All the Arizona games got rained out.
Yep.
Saturday, I watched Red Sox, Braves, and then I watched Tigers, Phillies. And then the big one I was actually looking forward to was Blue Jays, Yankees. I wanted to see, being from New Hampshire, I wanted to see what guys would be at the Fisher Cats this year and who I'd be watching and that kind of thing. And all of a sudden, I forget what inning it was. Might have been like the 5th or 6th. And I'm watching on MLB TV where you can watch any of them. And it just cuts to pregame for the Brooklyn Nets.
Yep.
And they're talking about it. Like, so if you want to watch, we got it on our sister network, Sportsnet Plus or whatever. And MLB TV still just showing me Brooklyn Nets pregame. I'm watching, and then, oh, by the way, Spencer Jones just hit another home run. That's great. That's great. I want to see it.
Thanks for the
I
update.
want to watch it. So that wasn't bad, but I mean, the fact that how do you not switch it over? I mean, it was fantastic. The whole aspect of it was great to watch. I mean, we'll get into it in a little bit, but I have my 7 prospects that I took away from it that was impressed with.
So before you go on with that, why would any team, given their roster, if you've got everything and you're taking your top 20 to 25 prospects, I get it if someone you want to watch someone or monitor them or don't want them included, bring somebody else up. Why play 7? What's the point of 7? If this is the idea to go and showcase these kids and you're going to make this roster, then you better follow current rules in regards. You have to come in and face 3 batters or end an inning, build the roster, figure out how to get them all in. And if you can't get every pitcher in, that's not a big deal. You should be going basically off your, prospect list. Do it the right way. Not everyone's going to get in, maybe not, but at least play 9 innings for Christ's sakes and give them a chance.
Yeah. And it's weird that they had to agree to it beforehand. Like Phillies, Tigers agreed to 9 innings. Braves, Red Sox, they played 7, but the Red Sox hit in the bottom of the 7th and they were up 7-1. And so they scored a run, made it 8-1, but the final score says 7-1. So why are we still playing the game if that's not the final score? That was the only takeaway I had that was a problem. Other than that, I think it was a fantastic event. It was actual baseball. It was the future of watching the league, your team, and different aspects of it. It was fantastic. But like one thing I noticed was like the Orioles on Thursday, they only had 6 innings where they were on defense, and they used 2 pitchers that went 3 innings apiece. So you announced, I don't know what their roster said, it might have been 7, but there's 5 pitchers that literally just went and sat there.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing?
We said it the first podcast that it'll be very much kind of how the baseball classic on a much smaller scale in regards to they learn things, improve, but there is a way that they could make this a little bit better where it's kind of the way it happens, right? It's right around NCAA tournament time. Why don't you take and showcase the top 12 MLB ranked or whatever teams, and maybe then make it a kind of a round robin or something where there's a little bit of meat to it. And you can start early in the year, give them, a couple of weeks to get it done, 4 weeks to give it done. And you're getting the guys work. It may play into a little bit of who's on the roster, who's not, mind you, because they're all trying to find out who's going to be on the big league club. But it'll be very interesting in my eyes what they do with this because, there's a lot, like you said, the early games, the Cubs and White Sox, I turned that on, rain delay just doesn't happen. It's a little disappointing, but at the same time, the idea of it is great. So you had mentioned to me, who are the 7 guys that stuck out to you during this?
So before we go right to that, I wanted to mention, like we just said, so I looked today, and if you haven't checked yet, our top 100 for March was released on the website on Sunday, I believe, yesterday or Saturday, one of the two. I believe it was actually yesterday. Was released. It's on the navigation bar. I went through today, and 73 of our top 100 took part in this.
Yeah.
Out of those 73, only 52 played, and that was either due to the rainouts that they just didn't make up, which I think was a lost cause because they should have made it up at least Sunday or Monday or Tuesday, or they just didn't get into the game. There was a couple that I saw as I was doing my write up today, which that is on the website, that you can go through and see what they did, how they did, and did they play? Did they not play? Were they not in the roster? But 52, I mean, I'm not doing the math right now. 19 players that didn't get in or
Yeah.
didn't play because of the rain that were on the roster. So there's 27 that weren't, on the roster, whether they're making the big league club, injury, whatever. But 52, I was surprised by that. Just over half of the top 100 played.
Yeah. That's, 52%, right?
Yeah.
That's not
So,
not too damn bad for the first go around.
but it was just, I think you missed the aspect, like, that number is a lot higher where,
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
you might have the 2 or 3 that we mentioned that didn't get in the game, but, the rainouts, you got to make those up. Especially if you're doing
Yeah.
something like this, you're trying to grow it, you got to make those up for the fans. Like you as a Cubs fan, you want to see your prospects. You missed out on the opportunity.
I want to see Montgomery play short for the White Sox too.
That's another one.
That
That's
was
another
one
one.
that, like, yeah, I mean, I've seen all the Cubs guys, the Red Sox guys this spring, a lot of the other guys for the other teams. Watched a lot of the Padres this spring just when I could. A lot of the Brewers as well, but like Montgomery was one that because that franchise, which we'll get into next podcast, is one that's kind of in shambles. But he's kind of that guy coming up that they're hoping, and I want to see him play. I don't normally get to see him play much, so it was interesting, but definitely something to build on. Definitely areas to improve, but at the same time, the idea is right, and I think
Yep.
it'll be grasped by a lot of baseball fans. A lot of those guys that are diehards that maybe don't have the opportunity to watch MLB TV, and have the time to spend and watch these minor league games. There's a lot of talent, and it's good baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, let's get into the 7 prospects. So the first one is Paul Skeens, who is the number 2
Yeah.
prospect on my top 100. Little surprised he only went 1 inning, but that's the way it works. And I like the
Yep.
idea with you have all those pitchers, 1 inning is great. He only threw 11 pitches, and he had faced 3 batters, 2 strikeouts, and
Yeah.
topped out at 102. And he
He's
was pumping that.
overpowering. Overpowering.
That I, do you think there was adrenaline facing the number 1 prospect in Jackson Holiday first step out of the game? I mean, I think I saw that was the 3 pitches he threw: 101, 102, 101.
Yeah.
I mean, he was pumping against Jackson Holiday.
Yeah. That was I've seen that at bat a couple of different times, and for both, right? Because that's not just for Paul Skeens, but for Jackson Holiday as well. I'm facing the number 1 pitching prospect,
And he
and
beat
I'm
him
going to
last
maybe
time.
face, exactly. So it's very it's too bad we have to wait so long to see that again before they're both, going to face each other because Skeens appears to be headed to the minors. Holiday's going to start with the big club by the looks of it. But
For how long?
I think, yeah, I'm hoping Skeens is up sooner rather than later. But it's very interesting. And to be honest, it's good for baseball for the Pirates to be good. And Skeens is going to play a big part in that with a lot of the other guys that they've got coming up.
The second one is the 40th ranked prospect in the top 100, Kyle Teal for the Red Sox.
Yep.
Went 2 for 2 with a double, an RBI, and a run scored. I was really impressed with Rafaela, but I didn't put him on this because he went, I believe it was 1 for 2 with a 3-run home run, which is the run Teal scored, and he had a beautiful play in center field. But Teal at the plate, watching his approach, could be a very good hitter, and it was very surprising. I think I noticed when I posted the lineup the other day, a lot of people commenting saying catcher hitting third, that's a problem. And if you watch the game and you watched his bat, not a bad option. He looked good.
Yeah.
The third one is the 54th ranked prospect from the Tampa Bay Rays, Xavier Isaac. Went 3 for 4 with 2 home runs, a double, 3 runs scored, 4 RBIs, and a walk. There's so
Not a bad
last
day at the plate.
they're back to back, but there's 2 first basemen back to back on the top 100. Kyle Manzardo and Isaac. Both were in the Rays system. Manzardo was traded by the Rays to the Guardians last year at the trade deadline. Seeing what Isaac did on Saturday, there's a reason why they figured Manzardo's the guy out. The fourth one, the 58th ranked prospect from one of my favorite teams, the Detroit Tigers, was Jace Young. Jace Young went 2 for 2, 2 home runs, 2 runs scored, 2 RBIs, and a walk. And he crushed the first home run.
Yeah.
He got a hold of it.
Yeah.
The fifth one is, I think, somebody I think you've covered a little bit in some of your Cardinals articles. Tink Hence, 2 innings pitched, no walks, no runs, 1 hit, 3 strikeouts, 30 pitches. And the Cardinals were one of those teams where they had 2 games. There was only 2 teams that had 2 games. He only pitched in game 1. But averaging 15 pitches an inning with 3 strikeouts, didn't give up a walk, didn't give up a run, and 1 hit. So it's a pretty solid day. And he was also named, MLB came out with their spring breakout first team. He was on it. And rightfully so. I mean, he looked good. The next one is the 76th ranked prospect, Justin Crawford, the son of Carl Crawford. Went 2 for 3 with a run and a walk. And he hit the ball hard. He looked good, making solid contact. Philly's got a couple good prospects to watch, and he's one of them. He looks.
If you're a Phillies fan, he's going to be playing in some of these late season spring training games just when they do split squads and stuff because he was just assigned today to the Phillies roster.
Did he play today? Did he slide in the lineup?
I am not sure. I want to say he may have played and gotten it back early on, but since I left work, I was unable to check anything. But I know he was moved up, and I know that's part of this process now with a lot of these guys that are heading to single A or to the complex league. They're going to be getting some time, giving some guys a break. So if you're watching these games late in spring training, you may be like, who the hell is this guy? Pay attention. There's a reason why he's there. Crawford's a great example.
All right, and the last one. And I'm only doing these the way I'm doing them because they're in order by the rankings. Yep. But this is the number 1 star of the whole thing. And it's the 83rd ranked prospect from the New York Yankees, Spencer Jones. And this guy, 3 for 4, 2 home runs, 2 runs scored, 4 RBIs. And he is literally the equivalent of looking at Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge. He is an absolute tank. And I don't know what they're going to do with Stanton. Nobody's going to eat that contract, so you might be stuck with it. But this guy is younger, and he's got, I think, more power. And you put that in the lineup, if they can somehow sign Soto and they got Judge still, that's going to be a terrifying lineup for years to come.
And if they don't go after Soto for big money, there's a reason for it too, because they know what they have coming.
And Jones could play right field and slide right into that spot. I didn't notice his glove because, like I said, I got cut off from what I was trying to watch. So I don't know what his glove looks like. I didn't see much of the glove, but the bat plays. And he's a lefty, so that bat at Yankee Stadium, is going to be good to watch.
Oh, yeah. Yep. So, two things following off on that before we jump into the NL East. Um, for me, it is extremely cool. I'm watching it with my 14-year-old son, trying to explain to him who Jackson Holiday is. And as I'm talking to him, I'm like, yeah, his dad, Matt Holiday, all this stuff. He's got a younger brother. He's like, who the hell's Matt Holiday? He has no clue, you know what I mean? And I forget that, it's been so long that since he's played. And then, Justin Crawford's dad being Carl Crawford, and just seeing these guys come up, similar to when Vlad Sr. was playing, and you'd always see him at the home run derby, Vlad Jr. Now Vlad's playing. I've had the luxury to see both play, and I still think Senior's better. It's just going to be, it's a lot of fun to see because you can kind of see Matt Holiday and Jackson's approach. And I think it'll be really interesting to see as Crawford matures and gets going to see how much of his dad's in him. Carl Crawford, when he was with Tampa Bay, was one of my favorites. I was disappointed when he came to Boston because he wasn't healthy. Not the way he played, just wasn't healthy. You know what I mean?
Mm.
See that guy come in and what he could have done healthy would have been great. But it's just another fun dynamic as a baseball fan, especially if you've got any tenure with it, is seeing some of these kids come up that you've watched their fathers play and kind of seeing the resemblance, seeing how it goes, and just to watch it. But also kind of like with Cody Clement's dad, Roger, being there and doing some of the broadcasts and hearing it. And it's just a cool, neat little fun thing for a baseball fan to see. And the second thing, I wonder if they ever grow on this. And I know that they do a minor league all-star game, but it would be really cool during the all-star break if they found a way to do the all-star game somehow for the minor leagues around that time and broadcast it when there's no major league games and it's on the big stage. It'd be just another way to see all this stuff come to fruition, see these kids play, and put it on ESPN, put it on MLB Network. Let everyone see it.
Well, they do the futures game. The only
Yes.
difference, like you said, is they do it on Sunday, so there is baseball being played regardless.
Yeah.
But that is the same thing essentially. It's just they limit, I think, more teams. Like I think you're allowed like maybe one or two. Like sometimes teams get more. I don't know the full aspect of the roster breakdown, but that's a fun thing to watch. If you want to watch some more of these guys and the top names and what they do, futures game is a lot of fun to watch. I've watched the last 2 years, I think. So it's definitely, that's another thing to definitely watch.
Okay. Nope, a lot of fun, a lot of great info. Appreciate that, you diving into that. I know you put a lot of work into the top 100 on the website. That's really cool to be able to pull that down, look through. I'll be interested to see how that plays out through the season, what changes, what stays the same. But now let's dive into the projections. We're going to go through the National League East, Central, and West. We're going to give who we think is going to finish last and work our way up in each division. And then at the end of this, as long as we have time, we'll talk about who we think is going to win the NL Cy Young, MVP, Rookie of the Year, and then Manager of the Year. And we'll do the same on the following podcast for the American League. The way we'll structure it, we'll start with the East. Who do you have finishing dead last in the National League East, and why?
Right now, the Washington Nationals. And it's just that division is good. The Nationals aren't there yet. I think they're a couple pieces away, and they get the prospects. Like I mentioned, they're in, I think there's two of them in the top 10 in Dylan Cruz and James Wood. So there's prospects. But they don't have pitching. Strasburg retiring was a tough one. Corbin hasn't really panned out. Who's the other one? I heard somebody say the other day that they would be a team to sign Montgomery. And that's because he's a guy they could add for 3-4 years, and he's ready when the young kids come, and he's an arm they have in the rotation that could stabilize things. I thought it was kind of surprising that name got floated out to that idea, but it's what I heard. So, but I think the division is a good division. I just think they're out of the 5 teams, they're at the bottom of the list for right now until the future comes. And then I think that the whole conversation changes if they can perform like I think they can.
So I agree with you. I think the Nationals are a young team, very young team, missing a lot of that leadership that they need. I have them finishing dead last. I think I would love to see Mackenzie Gore be that prospect that the Padres thought he was going to be. I'd like to see him stay healthy, pitch a whole year. I think Josiah Gray is another one that's young and could hopefully take that turn. Corbin, like you said, same boat. He's a guy that just can't seem to repeat what he's done in the past and stay healthy. I'll be interested to see. I believe it's James Wood. Probably not going to make the opening day roster. I do love CJ Abrams. I do think that he'll be a good one at shortstop, and they just don't have a lot of power. They have Joey Meneses and Joey Galloway. Other than that, there's not a lot there, and Galloway will probably strike out more than he'll get on base. Period this year, and that's
Yep.
just who he is. So I think that one was probably the easiest out of all the divisions, maybe other than one out in the West. But yeah, the Washington Nationals, as young as they are, if they were to sign Montgomery, I would look at that more as a piece to continue to grow your prospects, have them come in and trade him by the deadline if you guys are out and see what you can grab. Keep stockpiling these assets and go forward with that.
Hmm.
Who do you have finishing fourth?
This one was tough for me. I went back and forth between two teams, but I ended up going ultimately the Miami Marlins. And the
Okay.
reason why I did was the injuries to their starting rotation. It sounds like to enter the start of the season, and I think in the long haul, that is going to end up costing them a chance to maybe finish third and potentially have a shot at a wild card spot. But
Okay.
you're not going to have Sandy Alcantara for the year. It sounds like Yuri Perez might start the season either on the injured list or he's not going to make his turn through the rotation. Edward Cabrera is dealing with some stuff. I mean, looking at it right now, their rotation is Jesus Luzardo, AJ Puck, who is more of a bullpen guy, Trevor Rogers, Ryan Weathers, and Yanni Chineros. So it's not a rotation I trust going into opening day. I think Luzardo, they could find themselves trading him at the deadline more so than they had the offers over the offseason. But they just have too many question marks going into the opening part of the season right now to be a top three team in the NL East.
Okay. I struggled like you did with this spot. I ultimately landed with the Mets because, like you, looking at the pitching rotation, not a whole lot there on either side. A lot of injuries, a lot of unknowns. But when you look at the Mets and their opening day starter is Jose Quintana, that to me, they do have Diaz coming back at the back end of the bullpen. They have Adam Ottavino, who's another good bullpen arm. I just don't see Severino, Manea, Cody Senga, for that matter. I just don't see them all staying healthy enough, and I don't believe they have the depth. And there's just something about the Marlins that they always seem to find a way to piece it together to be competitive throughout the year. I find the Mets as a team for me that is in limbo big time in regards to what they want to do. They have Pete Alonso that they don't know what to do. There's a lot of rumors of him being traded. They have a lot of young guys with talent, but I just don't see them being able to get out of their own way. And I can see them being a team being sellers at the deadline and trying to rebuild that farm system. I think Pete Alonso could be gone. Marte could be another bat that could be gone, but just ultimately, for me, the pitching depth is not there, and there's just something about some of these guys that just are not clicking together, and I don't think they want to be there. And I think we're going to see that early on. Come June, it's going to be a very messed up uh, clubhouse. So I'm assuming, but I won't speak for you. Who do you have finishing third in the NL East?
The Mets. I think, like you said, their rotation is the same as the Marlins. I think Luzardo is miles above the rest of the Mets rotation if you had to compare them.
Yeah.
But the Mets lineup, I think, is a little bit better than the Marlins entering the season. Like you're expecting Tim Anderson to be Tim Anderson again if you're looking at the Marlins. Whereas the Mets, you got Lindor, you got Alonso, Nimmo, McNeil, I believe, is still there.
Yeah, he's playing second.
You got that. Alvarez looks like a good young prospect. You got Marte, like you said. So I think, they're going to have the bats that can hit to start the season, which will benefit them over the Marlins. The Marlins do still have bats. I'm not saying they don't.
Yeah.
But I think the bats will come into play more with the Mets and their pitching issues than the Marlins will. So I mean, it's gonna be close. It's gonna be
Yeah.
very close. I think at the end of the day, we're talking. They could have identical records with the Mets having one more win, or they could be tied. I think the
Yeah.
Mets just finish above barely.
So for me, I was looking at this, and as soon as I had sent my stuff off to you, I started reading about Yuri Perez. Me putting the Marlins third in the division solely based on him being able to at least make 25 starts this year. That very well could not happen depending on the severity of what they find out with what's going on. And Cabrera, the kid's got talent. There's just something missing right now for him. So, Luzardo is by far between those two teams, the Mets and Marlins, like you said, the best pitcher on either rotation. I will give the Mets probably a better bullpen, but there's just something about this team. The Marlins, like I said, they always seem to find a way to be competitive. They win some of these gritty games. They seem to be, they piggyback on emotion. If Chisholm can stay healthy and he can be that leader there with his emotion and his spark, I think between Luis Arias, Anderson, and even Jake Berger, if Berger can be, like he did last year and have some pop, I think that team can do well. And I think Josh Bell plays another big role in that. But I would not be shocked if you see those two teams separated by 1 or 2 games.
Yep.
I think it's that close, and it all is going to depend on health. So, with that said, who do you have second
The
in the
Philadelphia
NL East?
Phillies. The Phillies.
Yeah,
And I just think overall they're a very good team. They're
yep,
which we're giving away who our division winner is, but
yep,
to me they're farther away than the Braves. I think, but they're miles ahead of the Mets. So it's just like lock them in at the two is the way I see it. And the pitching, I like their pitching. I like Nola. I like the fact they locked up Wheeler before he
yep,
even touches free agency. I think Ranger Suarez is a little underrated. I think he pitched well in the postseason, made a name for himself.
yep,
I think the lineup is fantastic. I mean, Trey Turner, Real Muto, Harper. Moving Harper to first base opens doors for different players. It pushed Hoskins out, but who would you rather have? Bryce Harper, healthy,
yep,
playing first base and not having an elbow issue, or Reese Hoskins? I'm going to go Harper every day of the week. So I think the lineup's fantastic. I think they have a good team. They very well could be a playoff team again and make a deep run in October, but we can get to that later.
yep. No, I agree with you. With looking at the Phillies, you put them in any other division, maybe other than the West, I think that they would be sitting on the top. And as much as I think that the Braves are the best team in that division, which again, giving it away. But unless you couldn't figure that out on your own, that's your own issue. The Phillies right now, in my eyes, I've got them when looking at wins. I think they're easily over 90 wins this year, and I think they'll easily make the postseason. Which, like you mentioned, we'll get into. I really like their lineup. Moving Bryce Harper to first, um, in my opinion, is just going to extend his career. And the
Yep.
guy's he's one of the most fun players to watch in the league, especially when he hits. The kid is just made. I call him a kid, whatever. He's been in the league a long time,
He
but
is.
he's just a great hitter. And I think one of the players, you have Turner, you have uh, JT, you have Nick, you have Schwarber, Nick Castellanos. I
I
can't
forgot
really
about him.
pronounce it. I mean, they're stacked, but the one guy that I like on that team, and just because of he's overshadowed, which is easy with all these stars, is
Mhm.
Alec Baum at third base. Quietly goes about his business, plays good solid D, and has some pop. And he hits for average, hits some doubles. He can. I mean, that team also steals some bases too. They're always
Yep.
on the move. I mean, hard not to when you've got Jay Turner or Trey Turner, and then you've got even JT steal some bases for a catcher, and that's rare. Um, there's ways for them to win that division. Not saying it'll be easy, not saying things they have to stay healthy. And I think they've improved their bullpen. I don't believe losing Kyle Gibson will be that big of a deal, personally. Um, Eats some innings, does some stuff, but I think they've got enough depth there that the Phillies will easily finish second and head into postseason play.
Yeah.
So let
And
me hear about the Braves.
so let's be serious. We're both Red Sox fans. We've dealt with this for years.
Yeah.
Are we crazy to think that now that he's gone, Chris Sale's going to stay healthy and actually be a Cy Young candidate? I mean, that
I hope
rotation.
hell not, but god damn it. I mean, that guy, like, I'm rooting for him, right? Like, yes, I'm a Cubs, Red Sox fan, and a couple of the teams that I follow as well. But when it comes to this, and we kind of mentioned it in around last time with fantasy sports, and you grow following for certain players. And when Sale came over, we can't forget what he did when he was with the Red Sox that postseason and won the World Series. Came in, just was dominant. I think that he has a very legit chance to quietly being a number 3 there to put up some pretty impressive numbers, especially knowing that he's going to be facing other teams' number 3s instead of their number 1s. The pressure's off a little bit. I will be interested to see how they handle his workload, but that's a team there. God damn, I would not be shocked to see him just come out and pitch and make 29 starts and just basically, stick it to Boston on his
Yeah.
way deep into the postseason.
I actually saw today from something I read that he might be the number 4. It
Okay.
sounds. I don't know what they're gonna do. But from what it seemed like, it sounded like it was gonna be Strider, Freed, Charlie Morton,
Okay.
Sale, and then well, I can't even remember. Oh, Reynaldo Lopez
Yep.
is their 5, which I thought was interesting. But Elder did have a rough spring, so I think they're hoping he gets it right in AAA.
Yep.
But the lineup is just—it's funny to me how you can, let Freddie Freeman walk and you replace him with Matt Olson and you don't miss a beat at first
No.
base. It's it's a
More
wild
power.
aspect.
More
And
power even.
to think that they won that World Series a couple of years back without even Ron Acuna,
Yeah.
and he's your MVP last year. And what we saw from him last season was something we may never see again, unless it's from him,
Mhm.
and he may go even higher
Hey,
than that. But I think that team is far and away the best team in the East.
I agree with you. Um, Again, health plays a huge key in their rotation. Freed wasn't the same last year. Strider even down the back half was a little bit, worn down. Moving Sale to number 4. So you go Strider, who's a righty. You go Freed, who's a lefty. Morton, who's a righty, and then Sale as a lefty. I mean, that's a pretty damn tough rotation right there, regardless. And Lopez is no slouch. He's got some
It's smart.
stuff, and what's
It's smart.
expected of him? Nothing's really expected. And they still have Smith Schuster in the minors. They still have Elder, who they're hoping for. They have depth, and it seems to be everywhere. So their
And
lineup,
there's more
like you
coming.
said, it's just loaded. It's their lineup is again impressive. Very much, I wouldn't say it's head and shoulders above the Phillies, but it's still better, and that's impressive because the Phillies, like we just said, are a very good baseball team.
Hmm.
And I really wish TBS still had the Braves because that's a team everyone should watch more of.
Yep. Yep.
And just to see great baseball, great pitching, just some great players. And especially Matt Olson coming over a few years ago from Oakland. No one, people had heard of him, but now they get to see him. And like you said, Freddie Freeman, everyone knew was a stud. Olson steps in, they don't skip a beat. That team's just very impressive, and they're a tough one to beat. And I think they've got a lot of people there that are superstars. And we didn't even mention Austin Riley at third
Yep.
base. He's one that gets overlooked easily.
Another name we didn't even think of, Adam Duvall just signed.
Yep.
And so what's his role? I've seen a little bit of left field if Kelnick doesn't plan out. I've also seen the question of Ozuna. Maybe he DHs.
Yep.
The other thing I wanted to bring up was their bullpen. And Iglesias is going to be the closer, but AJ Minter is very underrated. And
Yep.
Tyler Matzik, another one that,
Yep.
Two lefties and a righty in a bullpen like that. Three great arms right there. And they added, I'm not big on him. I've never been big on him because he was a Tiger and how he pitched. I didn't really like him, but Joe Jimenez, they traded for him last year.
Yep.
And Aaron Bummer's there now, another lefty that was talked about the deadline last year. They have a good bullpen that nobody really talks about. They talk about the staff and the 1 through 4 and how deep that is if they're all healthy. They talk about the lineup, but the bullpen is very underrated. Very underrated.
And I think what you'll find as we continue through this process, you'll notice that these teams filled with depth. It's not just one superstar. They've got pitching depth in the starting rotation, and then the bullpen. A lot of people, it's easy to forget about the bullpen because it's not always pretty. It's always seems to be a revolving door with some teams. So just to give a kind of a recap of the NL East, we both agreed to the Braves and Phillies. Third place was a toss-up between the Marlins and Mets in third or fourth. And then we had the Washington Nationals being a young team with a lot of pieces for the future, just nowhere near ready to compete in this division right now. So that's the NL East. And we're going to take just a few seconds, and then we'll get into the Central. But I want to take some time and just talk to everyone here as you're listening, as you're reading articles on the website. If you're interested in writing about your favorite team and just joining us, or even finding out what it looks like to be a part of this group of individuals that are just writing about their favorite team or baseball in general and just being a part of the community, you can see on the screen here, go to Inside the Diamond at https://insidethediamond.com/join us with a hyphen, us, and then /. Right now, we've got a handful of writers that are writing daily about several different teams. We're trying to build this following so that we can include you in podcasts, talk about your favorite team, kind of get a little different look at things. So it's not just CJ and I telling you what we think. So if you're interested, have any questions, make sure to write into us, tap into the Join Us page, write a comment on the YouTube page, make sure to like and subscribe, and then let us know what you're interested in. We can let you know what we have for gaps and work with you to see how you can fit in and join this great group of people. It's a lot of fun, a lot of banter back and forth on different channels that we use to kind of pick on each other in regards to favorite teams, especially when, your favorite team is dealing with some key injuries. A lot of fun, good group of people, and I encourage you to kind of check us out. And if you're interested, definitely hit us up so we can see what we can do and make it work for you.
Yep. A lot of fun. Great group.
It is.
Some of you are knuckleheads.
We're growing, right? It's if you love baseball, you have a favorite team or favorite player, or you just like baseball in general, and you've got some free time. We all have second jobs, this is not a second job for us. It's more of a hobby. We all are busy day to day with family, work, and life. But the big thing is, if you want to be a part of something that's growing and just interested in this hobby, let us know so that we can find a way to fit you in.
Yep.
All right. The NL Central. Who do you have finishing dead last in the NL Central?
I toyed with this one. This was, let's just say, next week and this week, but the Central divisions in both these are going to be the toughest ones. But this one's tougher for me than the American League. and I went back and forth. I went the Pittsburgh Pirates, and I think I went that way with the idea of why are we putting Paul Skeens in AAA to start? I think that sets them back right off the jump. You know, I love McCutcheon being there, and I really wish they were more ahead than they are
Mhm.
because I'd love to see him back in the postseason. But it's just this is the same conversation I could have with as we had with the Marlins and Mets. Is this
Yep.
team and the team I have in fourth place? They could literally flip flop, and we could talk in the middle of the season and ask if we want to readjust our standings. But for right now, the Pirates to me, O'Neal Cruz, can he stay healthy? Reynolds, will he have as good of a season as he did last year? I mean, I think he was red hot to start the season last year. If not, that was 2 years ago. But and then
Then they signed him
McCutcheon,
to the extension.
right? And then McCutcheon, like I said, I love McCutcheon. I love his bat, but he's getting up there, and he's your cleanup hitter. So I like the Michael Taylor signing,
Yep.
but I go back to, and I think you and I talked about this. Their number two is Martin Perez. Not a bad pitcher, but I like him better as a 3 or a 4 where there's not stress on him. Mitch Keller, love Mitch Keller.
Yep.
Marco Gonzalez, I like him better as a 2. Marco Gonzalez, personally.
Yep.
The one player on this team that I'm really excited to watch this year is Jerry Jones, who is in my top 100.
Okay.
So that's a big name to watch, I think, personally. Like, it's a rookie. So are you expecting, the sky and the sun in his first season? No. But are we going to get flashes of what he could be? Absolutely. And I think that's the fun part to watch with this Pirates team is the future.
Okay. I don't agree in regards to that one, but I think most likely the team that I have finishing dead last is probably perhaps a team you're talking about. The Milwaukee Brewers finishing dead last, in my opinion, is going to happen in the Central Division for a couple of different reasons. Part of it, I think, might be due to their own decisions come trade deadline. But when you lose Corbin Burns, you don't have Brandon Woodruff. He's back with the team as a free agent, but not healthy, will not pitch this year. And I love Freddie Peralta. I like him as a number 2, 3 behind Burns and behind Woodruff. He's a power pitcher, but when your number 2 is Wade Miley, who, mind you, has pitched well recently for the Brewers, but I just do not see how that pitching staff can hold up in this division this year. Now, with that said, their lineup, I think Willem Contreras, people are talking about him possibly being one of the top 3 catchers in baseball. I can see it. I don't agree with it. I think the signing of Rhys Hoskins was big for that team. I love Bryce Terang at second. I think he's going to have a breakout year. And they have a lot of talent in the outfield with Jackson Chiro, Sal Frelick, who has been working at third base. And
Yep.
then you've got, Joey Weimer, you've got Garrett Mitchell. They've got a lot of talent. I just get this sense from that team that Willie Adames is gone. I have a feel, and I wrote about it, that Devin Williams being out for the first 3 months with stress fractures in his back, I have this sense that by the time he comes back, they're going to be deep in the division. And if he comes back and showcases, they've got some young arms coming up. They've got some guys in the bullpen that can really kind of probably take hold of that. I have Trevor McGill probably being the first guy up, and then Joel Payampas as the
Hmm.
second guy. Both very capable. I think McGill has more of the right-handed power pitching repertoire than what Payampas does, or Payampas, whatever it is. I apologize. But they also have DL Hall that they got in that trade for Burns. They have a lot of young arms to utilize. I just would not be surprised to see Willie Adames, Christian Yelich, and Devin Williams, those 3 no longer being Brewers come late June, even before the trade deadline, simply to jump the market and get ahead of it. And that's where I said that I think that they could be last in the division based on some decisions made by the actual organization. So as fun as they will be to watch because they have that young talent, I think that they are trying to rebuild because they have some guys, Gasser and folks down in the minors that are ready to come up, just not yet. I think that you could see a different look to this team so that they can build towards next year in 2026. So that's why
Mhm.
I've got them finishing dead last. Who do you have fourth?
The Brewers, like you just said.
Okay. Yep.
And the reason why I went them over the Pirates is I like the Brewers lineup. I think the
Mm-hmm.
pitching is even. You know, I think like we said with the Mets and Marlins, I think Mitch Keller is the number one between the two teams. Wade Miley right now is dealing with some shoulder soreness, so he's not even the number two right now.
Yep.
It's Colin Ray, Jakob Yunis, Joe Ross, and DL Hall. Pitching's not great, but
Yep.
I do like the lineup. I like Garrett Mitchell. I believe, if I remember, if it's the same guy I'm thinking of, he went to UCLA, not positive, but if it is, liked his bat in college. I like Contreras, Yelich, Hoskins batting cleanup. Adames needs to cut down the strikeouts.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Gary Sanchez. I mean, it's a lineup that's going to have strikeouts, but they have pop. Jackson Churio is in the eighth spot. He's in my top 10 prospects. I like him, especially as a center fielder. I think he's going to be nice to watch. It's the same thing. Like I said, it could be a half game. I mean, a 1 game, 2 game difference between them and the Pirates
Yep.
for last place. And I think they're just right there. I think, they're going to have Woodruff back next year. And I think they'll be a little bit
Yep.
better, especially with the future. But right now, they're just barely above the Pirates. Now, we talk about this in a couple weeks from now. Paul Skeens is now a Pirate. Are we talking different? Am I having the Pirates, 1, 2 games above the Brewers? Probably. But for right now, I give literally the slightest edge to the Brewers finishing ahead of the Pirates.
Okay. I have the Pirates fourth, and I actually struggled with putting them at 4 and not higher, simply due to the fact of Skeens and some of these young arms that I think could come up and do. I'm not saying they're as talented as some of these young arms that came up for Cleveland last year, which we'll get into next week. But I do believe that Mitch Keller is going to have a good year. They invested in him. They gave him the extension, the 5-year extension. I do like Marco Gonzalez. I do like Martin Perez. And I watched Bailey Falter pitch. Guy's got good movement on all his pitches. And the last guy I like in their rotation is I love Quinn Priester. I just, there's something about him. I really enjoy watching him pitch. I do believe you throw Skeens in that mix and you throw him as a number 3 just this year. Mix him in after, whether it be Marco, throw him in after Marco or Perez. Throw him in after a lefty. Both of them, yeah, I would rather see him pitch after Gonzalez, just simply because Gonzalez is more of that kind of more of a finesse guy. And then the next day they have to come in and face a power pitcher. I wouldn't throw him necessarily after Perez because Perez is, recently has been more of a power pitcher. He's lacking on his velocity a little bit now. But you throw Skeens behind Marco Gonzalez as like your number 3. You come off Keller, then you get the finesse pitcher in Gonzalez, and then you hit him with a power pitcher. I think that would be a great start to his big league career. Their bullpen isn't that bad. You've got Chapman, you've got Bednar, you've got a few other names that are out there. Again, if Skeens comes up, one of those guys is either going to the minors or going to the pen. And that just adds depth there. Now, for me, the difference with this team is I like the Michael Taylor signing. I like McCutchen. I like Jack Szwinski out in the outfield. They have a good mix of veteran and youth out there. Their defense in the outfield with Reynolds and all those guys, I think, is better. I think that you're going to see Cruz and Kebron Hayes stay healthy and really become leaders. And the one guy that I am absolutely kind of in love with for the Pirates, but also in fantasy this year is Henry Davis. That kid playing catcher this year, originally with Andy Rodriguez before getting hurt, he was going to play out in the outfield, which I think
Hmm.
is why you see a lot of these 1 year deals being signed. But Henry Davis being back behind the plate, he's a big, stocky kid. That's his home. And he showed pop last year. He was leading the team in home runs in spring training. I will not be surprised to see this kid come out and just kind of shock everyone because not a lot of people know what the Pirates have, unless it's O'Neill Cruz. They don't really pay attention. But
Hmm.
Henry Davis is a name to pay attention to. And I think that if Skeens comes up and people stay healthy, I don't see why this team can't finish at least fourth in the NL Central.
And that's where I go back and forth. I agree with you on the pitching, but I saw, and I was going off Fangraphs when I did this, so that's why I went the way I did. I saw
Yep.
Priester's probably going to start in AAA this year.
Yep.
I think he's another name. I watched a lot of him last year. I believe he pitched a little bit at Double A Altoona. He's a name I did like a lot last year. Like we said, Skeens, Jones, and there was
Yep.
one other one I have in my top 100, and I'm drawing a blank on him right now. Oh, Bubba Chandler. He pitched well the
Yep.
other day.
Yep.
Um, those four right there, they have a great, and Mitch Keller's locked up. There's your starting five of the future. And I think they have the chance with that pitching to be a serious contender in 2-3 years from now. But right now, they got to get that hump. And
Yep.
they're just, it's like I said, it's 1A, it's 4A, 4B. I don't think it's a fifth place. It's a 4A, 4B.
The one name that we haven't mentioned for the Pirates that is in the top 100 that we have is a second base prospect. And if he continues to play the way he did at the end of last year in the minors and can continue what he was doing in spring training, Tamar Johnson, I believe that's how it's pronounced. You add him to second base and you move Bay as like kind of a utility guy and play him wherever you need to. I think that team can really surprise some people if it all goes right, right? I mean, that for every team that we talk about, things are going to go wrong. But if things go really right for the Pirates, I think that they can really surprise some people. I'm not saying they're going to be the Diamondbacks. I'm just saying that the expectations people have for the Pirates are going to be vastly different than the end result if things go well.
I think we're probably a year or two away from Johnson joining the team. He was at Bradenton last year for most of the
Yeah.
year. So
Yeah.
I'd expect him to be at Altoona this year. Maybe, I mean, you can make the jump from Double A obviously to the pros, but it's a big jump, especially if the bat translates well to Double A, then I could see it. But I think we're next year where we talk in spring training where he really could be this opening day second baseman for the Pirates in 2025. But I
Yeah.
do like
You
his
have
bat a lot.
You have to be a shortstop, move to the outfield to make that jump from Double A
Yeah,
to the
yeah.
pros, which we'll get to. But so who's your third place team in the Central?
The Cincinnati Reds, and this was not. This is
Really?
going back to This was going back to the same
Wow.
conversation I had with the Pirates and the Brewers.
Okay.
I almost went the team I have in second, but the difference to me, and I go back to this is a conversation we had with the whole NL East, and I started with the NL Central, is the pitching. I think
Yeah.
I like the Reds pitching. I think they're right there, but I don't trust Montas. I don't trust what I saw from him last year that it
Yeah.
translates to being a number one in this rotation. I like Hunter Green. I've been a big Hunter Green fan since the day he got drafted. Ashcraft, I'm not fully sold on. Nick Martinez, same thing. I like Andrew Abbott a lot. I like Andrew Abbott a lot. I love the lineup, but you and I have talked on this on multiple occasions where you got too many moving parts.
Mhm.
You're trying to move, there was conversation of moving McLean to the outfield. There was conversations of TJ Friedel, but I think he's hurt now. So now that opens things back up to going back to the more of the regular plan. The thing that didn't make sense to me, and I talked to you about this the day he signed, was Candelario going there. Now you've just created this giant log jam where personally I think you're going to cause maybe not a big deal, but a little bit of an issue in the locker room with guys being upset about playing time. And that
Mhm.
can go different ways. And I think that could cause problems for a young team that's trying to establish themselves. And that's the only reason why I have them not finishing second. And that's another one. Like I went all day back and forth. Like they have a chance to be two, but I think they're trying to do too much with their top prospects,
Yeah.
and they're trying to put them in different situations. Like you made, I think you wrote an article or you talked to me about it, about the idea of De La Cruz in the outfield. You know, and
There
it's
hasn't been an infielder they haven't mentioned throwing out in the outfield because of the logjam they had
which
previous to the suspension.
they did that to themselves, in my opinion, by
Yeah.
bringing Candelario. They did it to themselves, and now it's created a big issue all around. And issues are going to, I mean, injuries are going to come up, and you're going to have that happen.
Yeah.
But it's just the pitching isn't fully there to me yet. The lineup is talented, but they're going to
Mm-hmm.
be one of those teams where I think where they're young, they're going to be hot. And when they're hot, they are so fun to watch. Like that Brave series last year where the De La Cruz hit for the cycle on that Friday
Yeah.
night, they're going to be fun to watch. But when they're not hitting, the pitching's not, you can't hide the pitching at that point. And so I think that's going to be the issue on that's why I put them at third. I think they're a
Okay.
year or two before. This is a wide open division, and the prospects, everybody in this division has solid prospects where, in 3-4 years from now, when they're all up, we could be talking about this being like a East Division race in
Yeah.
both the AL and the NL.
I don't agree with where you've got them, but I understand where you got there because it's similar discussion that we've had and stuff has changed for me recently. Um, I have the Cardinals finishing third. I think that right now with Sonny Gray, who I thought and still think is going to have a great year, but a nagging injury going into the season for him, who he's been healthy the past 2 years, but previous to that, there was always something. He's got all the talent in the world, and he's done well with the Twins and quietly done well with
Mm-hmm.
the Twins. Um, I do think Mike McCollis is going to have a good year. I think he's going to have a bounce back. Yes, he's
Sorry,
going
I
to
want to
open today's
interrupt you.
starter.
We got breaking news while we're live.
All right, who is it?
Blake Snell is signing with the San Francisco Giants, 62
Holy
million,
shit!
2-year deal and an opt out.
Holy shit! That's pretty big. Which now it'll be interesting. That's great, great news. But we're gonna have to do some adjusting. I have a feel on the fly. All right, fuck you then. You
I
had a
had this
little
all
high
planned.
there. Yeah, sure you did. Okay, so everyone, Blake Snell to the Giants. Wow, that is interesting. That is going to be something very interesting. That's a great pickup by the Giants. How many years?
2 years, 62 million with an opt out, which is
Okay,
what
so very similar to what Boris has been doing with all his clients.
he had said. I saw the report come out this morning that he was now looking for 2 years, 66 million. And
Okay,
for some
got
reason
it.
over the weekend, the Astros were in on him. But that idea of 2 years, 66 mil took them right out, which also made me question a little bit of Verlander's injury, but that's here nor there. But
Yeah,
Snell
we'll
is
be
now a
talking that
Giant,
next
and
week. Wow.
I mean,
Okay. Well, I apparently have some adjusting to do and thinking on the fly once we get to the West. But now that's wow, that is going to make that division a ton of fucking fun to watch this year.
mm-hmm,
A lot of
mm-hmm.
fun. So we'll get to the West here in a minute, but following up with my Cardinals finishing third, I actually have them with a winning record, 82-80, which is vastly different than last year's 20 games under 500. They have everything on paper. They have Contreras, they have Goldschmidt, they have Donovan, Arnando, Mason Wynn, who I'm excited to see play at short. I'm hoping he can hold off Crawford and play good enough. I think Crawford's a good mentor, and I think he's someone there that can definitely fit in. But with Edmund already having an injury, New Bar being a little bit dinged up, and Jordan Walker being a top prospect who had a good year, but a little underwhelming, in my opinion, I do think he's got the talent, and I could see him doing really well. I just am really concerned with Lance Lynn. Lance Lynn is the name in that pitching rotation. Him and Kyle Gibson. There's a reason why the Phillies didn't bring him back. They didn't want
Orioles.
Gibson back.
Orioles.
He was with the Phillies and
And
Orioles
then
because
the
he did get traded,
Mhm.
or the Orioles. That's right. No, last year he was with the Orioles. There's a reason why neither team were interested this offseason. They both seen him. They let him walk. Sorry, it was the Orioles. And then, as we said in the East, the bullpens play a huge piece. And as much as I think that Helsley is a top arm, if he stays healthy, he can definitely close more games. He can be up in that 35 range, but he hasn't proven that. And then you've got Giovanni Gallegos. He hasn't done it either. He was supposed to be the guy. And last year, the Cardinals bullpen, I want to say, and I don't have it in front of me, but I wrote an article about the Cardinals and their top, my top three bold predictions. And that bullpen was piss poor. I think their ERA was over 4.3 for the bullpen. And it was even higher than that, I think, out of the guys that pitched over, I think, 50 innings or so. And if you're going to have a Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson, and then whether it be Drew Rom or Zach Thompson as your fifth, if you beat up that bullpen too much early on, it is going to only hurt Sonny Gray and Mike McCollum because now they have to go into the seventh inning to even get to the back end guys. I just don't see this pitching staff right now being able to hold up. Now, if Sonny Gray comes back and it's not a lagging injury, they do better, 100%. But I just don't like their pitching staff as much as I like the teams ahead of them. So, what about who'd you have second in the Central?
The St.
Yeah,
Louis Cardinals.
yeah,
And the reason why, as I was going over both of these, I like the Cardinals pitching a little bit more than the Reds, and that's why I gave them the slight edge. The other thing I like is more of a veteran presence. You and I had talked a little while back on why didn't the Reds bring back Votto? If they're going to sign Candelario, bring back Votto as a veteran presence in the clubhouse for the young kids that you have around you. But the Cardinals went and did that essentially, and they went and brought Brandon Crawford in. And, he's going to be a leader for, Mason Wynn, who's in the top 100 prospects. But I love the bat of Goldschmidt and Arenado and Contreras. If he can, he had a little issue last year with the strikeouts, but if he can figure that
yeah.
out this year, he's going to be fantastic. They
My best
let,
friend just texted me. Sorry, did you see that? The Giants just got fucking Snell. So everyone's excited about it. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
no,
You're
hey,
just
you're
blowing
good.
me up.
It's an exciting move. And I like the other veteran move they made as well, quietly. Matt
Mm-hmm.
Carpenter is back as a Cardinal.
Yeah,
So there's, a lot of, I think, solid moves they've made this year. They're quiet ones. I mean, they were the first team in the offseason to just go out and get pitching.
yeah,
They didn't go get the big splash name. They want Montgomery. I've seen that multiple times that they
yeah.
were in on Montgomery. But, I mean, I like the pitching. I really Zach Thompson I'm not sold on yet, but I think like we said, if Sonny Gray's injury isn't that big of a deal and it's not nagging, he comes back and your rotation is, Nicholas, Gibson, Gray, Lynn, Matz. It's a pretty good rotation in the NL Central. It's wide open. The second place, I think, with the lineup they have
Mm.
last year, I think was a fluke. I think it was all a fluke. So I think the bullpen is the biggest question mark for this team. I think they might be honestly in the bottom of the division as far as the bullpen is concerned.
Yeah.
But I think their lineup and their pitching alone could carry them to second place in the Central.
Now that you mentioned Montgomery and just looking at this pitching rotation, if you were to plug in Montgomery in between, Gray is not going to be the opening day starter due to his injury. But when he's back, he's going to slide into number one. Michaelis will slide into two. Then you slide in Montgomery in between Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson because they don't have a lefty right now other than Drew Rom and Zach Thompson.
Mm-hmm.
And neither one of those do it for me. Now the question is going to be, does a contract probably in the 52 to 47 range for 2 years. I'm assuming it'll be very similar to what you see Blake Snell signing for due to the fact of who his agent is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that makes that pitching staff a lot deeper. I'm not a huge fan of Montgomery, but at the same time, you plug that lefty in between all four of those righties, it gives it a little bit more depth and a different look than the Drew Romo and Zach Thompson. Not saying that they can't do it, but Montgomery's way better in my eyes right now, and I dislike him.
That would honestly, well, obviously we know who I have number one, but
Yep.
that for me, adding Montgomery to that Cardinals rotation, I think for me would put them at the top, and they
Okay.
would bump the team I have at number one.
Jesus Christ. Okay, so let's get to who I have number two. And I talked about Reds, and I do quite a bit of keeping up with them and written different articles for them in regards to what I think about the Reds. And for me, I have the Reds a hell of a lot closer to my top team than I do the third team. I actually have them 7 wins higher than third place team right now. And I think you mentioned it at the beginning. I'm not a huge Jameer Candelario fan, just simply because he burned me too many times in fantasy when he was with the Tigers, and I just grew to have this sensation. Then he came to the Cubs, and I had to grow to kind of accept him. He's a good baseball player, but when they signed him, it made no sense. All it did to me is confirm that Joey Votto was gone, but it didn't clear up their mess. I really, really, really am high on Hunter Green this year. I am high on Nick Lodolo, who appears to be coming back nicely from his fractured fibia. Then you've got Andrew Abbott. You've got Montas, who, again, I'm not sold on either. But if he can be the guy he was in Oakland and stay healthy, if he's healthy, sky's the limit for this kid. He's got all the talent in the world. He's got great movement on his pitches. These guys have depth within their rotation that some of these other teams that we talked about just don't have. They have Nick Martinez, who I see being a guy that will be in the starting rotation for a while before, whether it be Williamson or Abbott, move up. And now Nick Martinez goes down to a bullpen that really sucked last year with the Reds. Alexis Diaz was great, but other than that, it was tough. They do have Emilio Pagan and Teje Antone, and they have different arms in there, and they have some depth there that David Bell can play with. So the pitching staff I have above the Cardinals, and why I have them vastly above by 7 games, was the pitching staff difference. Now you add Montgomery, that throws a whole new wrinkle into it. But when I look at their lineup, with Tyler Stevenson, if he can stay healthy, I think has a chance to show people what he can do as a catcher. But now with Noelvi Marte being suspended for 80 games, I would shift Candelario over to third, let Christian and Carson Strand play first, and I think their best prospect who was overlooked is Matt McCain. I think as flashy as Ellie De La Cruz is and as good as he is, he's not as good as Matt McCain. If you watch day to day and just look at the numbers, Matt McClain is the reason why Jonathan India was available all offseason.
Mm-hmm.
So if you move Candelario over to third, it kind of opens up a little bit for 80 games, right? Noelvi Marte is out for 80 games, so opens it up a little bit.
And he's
So now
probably
you
going to be
get
at AAA to start the year once he comes back.
So you're looking at least half the year, or almost 100 games, close to 100 games before he even thinks about moving up to the Reds. So now all of a sudden that log jam that we pissed and moaned about and kind of teetered back and forth in the beginning of the year has opened up. Candelario goes to third. You've got CES at first, McClain at second, Ellie De La Cruz at short, India at DH, and now you have Spencer Steer at left. TJ Friedel is nursing a sore wrist after trying to make that catch. Fraley or Stuart Fairchild will fill in for him in the meantime. And then you get Will Benson, who I think will have now a clear path to everyday playing time with Candelario moving to third. You don't have to worry about India moving to left and then shifting someone to play right. I think that the suspension has brought clarity to what David Bell can do with this lineup. And I'll be very, very interested to see what they can do with a revamped pitching rotation. And if they get any improvement from their starting rotation in regards to eating innings and not beating the shit out of that bullpen, they can be a very scary team. And I think, and I wrote it in my article, that Nick Martinez is going to start in the rotation. He'll be by June in the bullpen. And I think the Reds will be in a position that they should actively and aggressively attack the bullpen market end of June, early July, grab that arm that they need to put them over the top. And I think that this team is going to be very, very good and most likely be in the postseason. But I just really, they're a fun team. Their pitching rotation last year, I want to say that their ERA was, they may have also been over 4. And that, if you're asking your offense to score 5 runs a game, I mean, with this lineup, sure, but not every night.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't have, if Hunter Green and Montas can't come in and be shut down guys at the top of the rotation, which I think they could be, it's going to be tough, tough on that bullpen. But I do like their pitching currently better than I do the Cardinals. So, number 1 team, no doubt in my mind who it is. Who's yours?
The Cubs.
Yeah.
And it's just that lineup. Even before they brought Bellinger back, I had it as a closer race in the Central. But bringing Bellinger back, they didn't lose much. They didn't add much. If the way I look at it, you brought Bellinger back, you're the same team as last year. But the rest of the division, I think personally, except for the Cardinals, who finished in last place, got worse. The one big thing they did bring in was a manager who has won the division before. But I like Suzuki. I think Suzuki's going to have a great season. Dansby, I've always been a big Dansby Swanson fan ever since he was at Vanderbilt. Loved him. He didn't. Did he ever? I don't think he ever played for the Diamondbacks. He was traded before. No, he played his first couple of years, first 2 years.
Yeah.
Then he was a Brave. Obviously got a ring, so he has the postseason experience. And then, I like the whole lineup from top to bottom. The bottom does bother me a little bit at 8 and 9, but that's going to be the same for every team. There's not really any stud 8, 9 hitters in the league. Or if there is, it's because the lineup's loaded and you're bumping them down there, like probably the Dodgers. But I like the pitching. I like 1 through 3. I think Imanaga is going to be a very underrated signing. I think he went, he was talked about for quite a few teams, the Giants, who just signed Snow. I'm surprised it took him that long after needing another pitcher. I like Steele, and Steele was a Cy Young candidate last year. I think I've always liked Kyle Hendricks. He's just getting up there in age. I like Jordan Wicks, and I want to see Hayden, what's his last name? Wisniewski?
Yep.
I want to see what he does. As of right now, that's what Fangraphs has, because it looks like Tayon's hurt. What's he dealing with? Lower back tightness.
Lower back tightness, yeah.
Did he have surgery? Looks like he had surgery on March 9th.
Huh?
Or is that when it's the injury? No, it says, injury
that was when
surgery
injury,
date.
yeah,
Okay.
I was going to say that I definitely am not doing my job if he had surgery, if I didn't write about
but
that.
I like the one thing that I think puts them above everybody in the division is that bullpen. You got, Alzolay, Neris, I like a lot. I think Merriweather's going to be a nice arm. I like Smiley in the middle. Mark Leiter's fun to watch.
Yep.
And, they have some pieces there in that bullpen that I think right now on paper, once the season starts, who knows what happens. But right now on paper, doing a prediction, I think they have the best bullpen in the NL Central. And their rotation is not the best in the division. Mm-hmm. It's there. It's 1A, 1B. I think as long as health plays, health is the biggest factor. But I think they are the best well-rounded team throughout the whole division. That they probably take the NL Central.
No, and I agree with you there. I do have the Cubs winning 90 games, one more than the Reds, mind you. I am a huge Cubs fan. They're the team I watch the most, in the season. I do like Steele. I think Steele will have another good year. Kyle Hendricks, I think, is probably better fit for a 4 spot if Italian was healthy, he'd probably be my number 2, followed by Shota, who I think is going to really – he'll probably lead the team in strikeouts is my prediction right now. I like Jordan Wicks in regards to what he's done this spring. I've seen him probably the most and paid most attention to him when he's pitching. And I noticed that, those that may have watched his first start and he walked a bunch of guys, gave up hits. But if you watch this spring training and what they're doing, and especially in the early going, they're going out with a mission in they're trying to work, whether it be him especially was working his breaking stuff on the outer half. Then the next inning, it was working on the inner half. So they've got a routine and they've got a plan. It's not about results necessarily in hits, walks, whatever. They're trying to see the execution. Their bullpen, I think, between Azalai, Neris, who I think is a sneaky good signing by them. And I really liked what Merriweather did at the end of the year. And I also am very interested to see what Yency Alamonte can do. He was part of that trade that brought in Michael Bush. They have a lot of depth, starting rotation depth, bullpen depth. Javier Assad is a guy that is another name that you can plug him in as a key bullpen guy. He can be a spot starter. They just have that depth. And I agree with you that Craig Counsell coming over from the Brewers, they didn't make a lot of moves after that. It was very quiet at Wrigley. And everyone was starting to piss and moan, thinking that if this is all we do, we're screwed. They were all waiting for Bellinger to come back, which I think is a great play there. It does kind of mess up PCA, Pete Crow, Armstrong coming up immediately, but his bat's just not ready for Major League at this point in time. He needs to go down to AAA and just knock the cover off the ball. His defense is there. His speed on the base path is amazing, but I think the Cubs with Bellinger in center, Swanson at short, Horner at second, and I honestly believe that Horner's the best shortstop on the team. I think if you played him at short and Swanson at second, they'd both still be Gold Glove caliber. Horner's that good of a defensive athlete, and last year his bat was phenomenal. The one last thing I'll say about the Cubs is Morel should be the starting third baseman. Give that kid all the at-bats and all the playing time he can take. He, to me, is very similar to what Baez was when he was there. He's got that energy about him that he just produces in big moments. I'm very excited to watch this team in general. And to be honest, I think their biggest move in this offseason was not signing Bellinger. I think that was just due to happen. I think the trade for Michael Bush to come over and settle down that first base position is the best move that they could have made, because Patrick Wisdom, as much as I like him, I'm not a huge fan. Not a huge fan of what he brings to the table. He's got pop. He's just not there. So this Cubs team, to me, is very exciting to see what happens. And I think not in the trade market, but what they bring up from the farm system to plug in and play. They have Owen Cassie. They have, PCA. They have Matt Shaw. They have a lot of talent. And this team's going to be fun to watch for years to come. So we agree. Just a recap. The Cubs are the clear favorite between the two. Second and third, I had the Reds. You had the Cardinals at number 2. Then flip-flop, you had the Reds. I had the Cardinals. And then you had the Brewers at 4th. I had the Pirates in 4th. I had the Brewers in 5th, and you had the Pirates. So that's the NL Central for us right now. We're going to take a couple of minutes here just to talk about the gear we have at Inside the Diamond before we head into the NL West. If you have been to our website, head over to the store, check out what we have to offer, grab some fan gear, check it out. It's at the website. You can find it right in the store. Check out some of the articles as well. A lot of stuff there, hooded sweatshirts, hats, T-shirts. As a growing company and a growing brand, more will be to come. But right now, that's what we have to offer. I encourage you to check out what we have, support us that way, buy some gear, sport it, wear it during the, when you're watching, talking baseball. And again, earlier, if you're looking to join us, write about your favorite team and have these conversations with CJ and I and some of the rest of the crew, definitely hit us up. Let us know what you're thinking. Let us know if you have questions on any of the gear that we have on the shop, and definitely hit us up if you're looking to be part of this group and fun community that we have that's talking baseball on a day-to-day basis, and just kind of be part of this group. So head over to the shop, let us know what you think, and buy some gear. All right. This is the division that now, given the news, is definitely going to be a little bit more interesting. And I don't think that the dead last team will be a shock. And I think I'll let you go first and let me hear who you have finishing dead last in the NL West.
Well, I have the Colorado Rockies, and like you said, I don't think it's really a surprise, but this is a funny story. So I was actually listening to Foul Territory the other day. Maybe it was like a week and a half ago or something. And they were talking about, I don't know where they got this information from, so don't come at me with what I'm about to say. The Rockies were the most bet team to make the playoffs this year. I don't know what the odds are, but they said that they're expecting, I think from what they're seeing is a lot of people are expecting the Rockies to be the Diamondbacks of last season. Now that's not going to happen. They're not there. They have the chance to be. The lineup isn't bad. The bottom three is not fully what you would expect, but I like Elias Diaz behind the plate. I mean, I believe he was an all-star last year. I believe he actually had a big home run last year, if I remember correctly. I like McMahon. I like Brendan Rodgers. I remember when he got drafted. It was big on him when he got drafted out of high school. Nolan Jones is another one. I think you asked me about him last week when we had the pick. I love Chris Bryant. The idea of him at first base for this year is a little interesting. And I like Charlie Blackmon, but he's another one. He's getting up there in age. They don't have the bench depth, so an injury goes down, they're in trouble. The pitching is another big thing. I mean, one is Kyle Freeland. I'm a big Kyle Freeland fan. You want to talk about an arm that I would love for the Red Sox to go get, or somebody like that needs pitching in the American League? Kyle Freeland's a big name out there for me. I think he might be available at the deadline. I like Cal Quantrill at the 2, but he's hit or miss. Yep. And then after that, it just falls off completely. The bullpen is just a mess. Justin Lawrence is their closer.
It's a fucking shit show.
I mean, I like Ty Black. That's not a bad name, but he's a long reliever. He could slide into the rotation of an injury. I did see, and I don't know the expected return for him, Armand Marquez is back pitching off the mound. He had Tommy John last year in May. Yeah, I like him a lot too. He's another good arm. And then I forget how you say his last name, Antonio Senzatella.
Yeah,
he had Tommy John as well in July, so he's probably not going to pitch this year. If he does, it's going to be towards the end of the season.
Yeah,
those 3 arms when fully healthy, those 2 in Freeland, it's a decent rotation that isn't going to win the division. I mean, you have the Dodgers in the division, the Giants now with Snell, Diamondbacks, the Padres are still the Padres. They're not there yet. The pieces are in the minor leagues are iffy at that. I mean, I don't know how long we're talking before this team's even competitive again, but this year they're just not there, and it's going to be a rough year to be a Rockies fan. It's going to be cold, in April and May out there. It's going to be tough to even want to watch this team when you know what you're going up against, unless you're going to see the opposing team and the talent you have in that division and around the league. But it's going to be a tough season out there.
I agree with you. That's who I have finishing dead last. I mean, I have them winning 66 games, being 30 games under 500. And if you look at, like you meant, I mean, everything you said was right. Kyle Freeland to me, and I have no idea why, but when I look at him on paper, not when I see him pitch, I think Jamie Moyer. And maybe that's just because Moyer finished there and was a lefty. And it's a pretty piss poor, probably, comparison. But I do believe Freeland, Marquez, if Marquez is healthy and pitching around the deadline, him and Freeland both would bring something back. and they need to rebuild. They had a lot of young players that they were high on. They're missing so much. It'd be we'd waste our time if we continued talking about them. Their bullpen sucks. Beeks is a lefty out of the bullpen, and Evan Justice. They just don't have it.
Another injured
Um,
arm is Daniel Bard. He just had
yeah,
surgery in
yep,
February.
yeah, which is too bad because he came on, did well. Bryant moving to first is interesting. I think that's just to keep him out of harm's way. Honestly,
Mm.
don't let him run. Try to keep him from moving unless he's running the base paths. I am like you. Ryan McMahon is a guy that I don't know what his contract is. I don't know what it looks like, but he may be the most valuable trade piece come the deadline for just what he's able to do. And maybe he's just another Coors Field guy. That's the other thing with a lot of these Rockies players. How do they play outside of Coors Field?
Mm.
Um, Nolan Jones is exciting. I'll be interested to see how Doyle does in center this year. I just there's nothing there that excites me unless I'm looking for an addition to a team at the trade deadline. So we both agree with dead last. Let's have some fun. Who do you have? Go ahead.
Before we go there, there is
Yep.
one name. If you want to follow prospects at all, there is one name from the Rockies that I do suggest you watch pitch, and that's Chase Dolander. He is
Yes.
in the top 100. I believe he might start the season in Hartford, which if he does, I would love. I might go to a game at when he starts because he is. I think he could be a great arm to add to this rotation. Now, granted, Double A, so it might not be until a year or two, but he was, I believe, again, way too many colleges, but I'm 90% sure he went to Tennessee, and he
Yeah.
was a great. Assuming he's the right guy I'm thinking of, it was a lot of fun to watch at Tennessee. I do remember watching him last year in the minors. It was a good arm. I mean, I think believe he was actually drafted last year, so he's
Yeah.
probably 2 years away. But that is an arm. If you have MLB TV and you want to watch a minor league arm when he pitches, that is an arm I highly suggest you watch as a Rockies fan. He will be coming, and I think he'll be a solid arm to add to that if they keep Freeland and Marquez
Yeah.
and they have the rotation they do have and adding him to it in a couple of years.
So to that, will he play up in New Hampshire?
Probably, yeah.
Hartford comes up, right? And I know they come up and play the Sea
Yeah,
Dogs in Portland, which isn't
they're
far
all in the
from you
same
either.
division. Yep, they're all in
Yeah.
the same
So
division.
there's a lot of talent there to go and watch. A lot of fun there. So
Hmm.
good call there for bringing that up for fans there that let them know that there's at least one pitching prospect that's worth tuning into. And again, all these guys that are in the minors, just because they're a top prospect, they can come from out of nowhere and grow into something. So if you're following their minor league clubs, pay attention. Keep eyes on the stats. Keep an eye on our fan page because eventually we'll have someone covering the Rockies, giving you kind of more details. But yeah, the Rockies don't have a lot to talk about at this point in time. So who do you have finishing fourth in the division?
This might be a little surprising, but the San Diego Padres. And I
Okay.
have that because I've said it for every team, the pitching. The Dylan
Yep.
Cease acquisition is a good one, but you're trying to replace, Blake Snell. And
Yeah.
he just went to a rival in your division, but
Mm-hmm.
he won the Cy Young for you last year. I love, and we've talked about this, I am a big Yu Darvish fan. I love
Yep.
watching him pitch. I think he has got great stuff. I like Musgrove as a two. So you go Darvish, Musgrove, and Cease. But then Michael King's a question mark. He didn't
Mm-hmm.
pitch bad last year for the Yankees, but he's a question mark. And then Yanni Brito as the five is another question mark from the Yankees. I'm not sold on the pitching. Again, we're going back to, I think you wrote about it the other day. Jackson Merrill's going to start in center field. Kid
Yep.
does look good. He's in my top 10 prospects. I think he's going to be a great player. Is it this year, though? I don't see it yet.
Yeah.
Maybe. I think he definitely could by, May, June. I think April he's going to have his speed bumps.
Yep.
And then another one is Graham Pauley's playing third base. And from what it looks like from Fangraphs, is Machado's going to DH, which is Machado coming back from an injury? I didn't see something about it. But how do if Machado isn't injured and we're moving him to DH, how are you taking one of your best gloves off the field?
So
That
who'd you
that
say
to me
that
is a little
they
bit.
have playing? Who's playing third?
Graham Pauley, he was a non-roster invite, left-handed hitter.
No
Was
shit. I
drafted.
know of him, but I just don't. I can't. Huh.
It's a head scratch for me to have Machado not playing third base for that team.
Yeah, just
I mean,
defensively. Again, you said it. That's just very strange.
and I do love the move of moving. He may not like it, but Bogarts to second base and moving
Yeah.
Kim the shortstop. I like that
Yep.
move. Cronenworth at first base. I like Cronenworth. It's. I just think there's way too much talent in this division, and I think that's the problem. And I think we're going to run into that, when we get to the American League with the American League East. It's the same thing where
Yeah.
there's good teams, but there's just so much talent. And this was, mind you, this was before, because I said it,
Yeah.
before
Before the
Blake
trade,
Snell
you had
just
it
signed,
before.
right before Blake Snell signed with the Giants. So I've stuck by the Padres they're a 500 team with this current roster, even with
Yeah.
Cease. I think they're right around 81 to 84 wins this year. You know, in that division is just stacked, and they're going to have to play each of them 13 times. Now, going 10-3 against the Rockies, it probably won't be that hard to do, 9-4, but the Giants, Diamondbacks, and Dodgers, that's a little tougher. You might be talking 6-7, 5-8, 7-6, right around that area.
Yeah. Wow. So I'm going to. This is on the fly. I'm looking at the Giants pitching staff, and you have Logan Webb, throw in Snell, then you have Kyle Harrison, Wynn, Hicks, Cobb, Robbie Ray's injured, right? He's on the 60-day DL. I do believe the pitching staff, the starting pitching overall in San Diego on paper looks better, but I'm going to go the Padres as well. But I still have the Padres winning, having a winning record and being 83-79, finishing fourth. The issue I have with the Padres is they're trying to compete in the West. And I think as much as I wrote about Jackson Merrill giving the kid a chance to play. I wanted him in left. I wanted Azakar playing center or at least starting. It appears right now that Azakar is going to be the odd man out, and they're going to let Profar, if he's healthy, he's a little dinged up, be in left. And I would do the exact opposite. I would have Profar on the bench being a utility guy, let Azakar play. If you're going to go young with Merrill, why the hell not go and keep Azakar playing? He was your starting center fielder.
Right.
The reason why I've got the Padres fourth and moving them behind the team I'm putting in third now is, as much as I like Joe Musgrove, there's something not right. And I hope he proves me wrong because I really like watching him pitch. I liked him when he was with Pittsburgh. I think you're going to see Darvish as one. I would move Cease to two. The only thing with that rotation right now, righty, 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 righty. No left-hand pitching. Not that that's a huge deal, but at the same time, when you're going up against some of these lineups, you want to have, especially in a 4-game series, give them a different look. And if you
Mm-hmm.
look at Darvish, who's got 6 pitches, I believe, and then you've got Cease, who's got 5, Musgrove, he's got 4 or 5. You're more finesse and power there in those first 3, but it can go real bad real quick for Musgrove, and that's my fear. And as much as I like the Cease move, you can tag it up to him being a White Sox and the team supporting cast sucking. There's still question marks with Dylan Cease,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's why you saw it take so long for them to find a trade partner.
Mm-hmm.
Michael King, I'm on board with you. Like, not sure. I hope he does well now that he's out of the pinstripes. And I think he's got some talent. He's a good 4 or 5. Brito has got talent. I would start Matt Waldron ahead of him. Personally, after watching some games, Waldron just seems to be more put together and less of a hit or miss in regards to, from one start to the next. I think Brito would be better in AAA to start the season. But that again, that's what the fuck do I know? I'm just watching, a couple of spring training games, and I don't know the discussion in regards to what the game plan is going in. And that's the thing that I've said it before. We have to be mindful of that. I
Mhm.
am not a fan of their bullpen at all, other than Suarez, Wandy Peralta. The rest of it is very, very. I think if you add Brito to the bullpen, that helps. And instead of sending him down, I'm not sure I would do that. But their bullpen is shaky, and if they really do move Machado out of third and just DH, their defense is going to struggle,
Yep.
and that's going to lead to some of those, the WAR, stats. That's a huge move, but I do think they'll have a winning record. I mean, I'm wearing a Padres shirt today. I'm a big Tatis Jr. fan. A little disappointed with what happened last year, but I do think that he bounces back, and I'm really excited to watch Jackson Merrill play out in center. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this all plays out.
Disappointed what happened last year. He was a platinum glove, was he not?
Yeah, I don't like, my son was a huge fan, and then when he got in trouble, and then it kind of soured me to go into it. And again, that kind of shit is what it is. I think that I'll only talk about it quick, but brought it up last week with Marte. MLB should have a set allowed regiment and selection of what's available,
Hmm.
and that should all be bought through the team. Because if you don't buy through the team, then you deserve everything you're getting. But put some onus on the teams as well in regards to what you're recommending for them to take. That's all I'll say about it. But I think that there's ways of cleaning this up, because if you've got people in other people's ear, like, here, take this, it's all clean of this stuff. These guys are young. They trust too much of what's around them. So Padres at 4. Who do you have number 3?
Now this is where I would change on the signing, and I'm
Okay.
I'm debating it, but I'm gonna stick with what I originally had. I'm gonna go the Giants at 3,
Okay.
even with the Snell signing. I I'm just gonna give a little tease. I don't know if we're gonna do it this week because now we're at over an hour and a half.
Yep.
Um, I have the Giants making the playoffs, even at third. I'm just gonna say it now. But I like the moves they made this offseason. Jung Hoo Lee, I think, is a solid bat that nobody knows about yet. Can get on base. I wrote about him as an option for the Tigers right before spring free agency opened up. I love Soler in the middle of that lineup. I think that is going to be fantastic at that field. I like Chapman going there. I thought that made sense from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you can move Mike Yastrzemski to the 7th spot in that lineup
Yeah.
is just showing you what you have as far as, bat to ball and power. And I think that's a fantastic move. I like the bench. I like Wilmer Flores. I think he's a nice piece that you can move around all over the diamond and give somebody a day off. It's a nice piece. The pitching, as of right now, going into opening day, is where I'm a little skeptical because of the injuries. You can, if you add, Cobb back to this lineup, to this rotation, then I think they're right there with the Diamondbacks. I think without him, there's a question mark with Jordan Hicks. Can he throw hard? Yes. Is he great for 1 to 2 innings? Yes. Can he go 5, 6, 7? We'll see. That's a question mark. Granted, he is a number 4 starter, so you're not putting pressure on him. Kyle Harrison is another pitcher I have in my top 100. There's been a lot of talk of him and Ricky Tiedemann from the Blue Jays as the 1A, 1B, top prospects left-handed pitching. I think he's an arm to watch this year and very underrated. I actually saw a lot of mock trades this offseason as him as a trade to the Red Sox for potentially Yoshida or something along those lines.
Yeah.
I like him. I think him as a 3 now instead of a 2 is something to watch. Especially, it seems like Snell's probably going to be a 2. Is Snell going to pitch opening day? Probably not. Or opening week? Probably
Yeah.
not. He's probably not going to be ready till probably the second or third week of April. He hasn't really thrown at spring training or anything, so he's going to take some time to really get there. Unless they rush him. Who knows? But I do like their bullpen, and I like both Rogers and I like Camillo. as their
Yeah.
closer. I think that's, you can look at that with Harrison, Hicks, and Wynn, that, if they can give you five, you can go Luke Jackson, Ryan Walker for the sixth, and then you go right into the two Rogers for the seventh and eighth, and then Duval for the ninth. And I think you can get away with that. The problem is you're going to wear out your bullpen quick if you do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're going to need Cobb back. You're going to need Ray. I don't know when Ray's expected back, but what did he
He only
have
made one
anyways?
start last year for the Mariners, I believe.
He
So
went under in May. Is he even throwing yet? Marquez went under in May for his surgery, and he's back throwing. So the question is Ray back throwing? If he is, and we're talking, he could be back in
yeah.
June. That's a conversation we could have where they could be a team that jumps into maybe second in the division. It depends what kind of start they get off to as well.
Okay. I agree with you. I originally had them one game behind the Padres at 82 wins, but now with the Snell signing, I have them probably at 85, 86 wins. The difference between for the biggest difference is especially now with Snell signing and the kind of possibility of Robbie Ray coming back late June, being that trade deadline acquisition, but he's already on your roster. I think that if Jordan Hicks struggles in the starting role, you slide him back into that bullpen that's already stacked. It just adds depth. They have that pitching depth that we discussed earlier, and I'm not a huge fan of their lineup, but they've got the right pieces in the right place where they can kind of win these games with good defense and timely hitting. And that pitching staff is, as long as everything plays out with Harrison, Wynn, and Hicks, and Cobb is himself, the way he's steady Eddie there. I think between Webb, Snell, and Harrison, and then the addition of Robbie Ray, if he can come back healthy, now you don't have to rush him. I don't think they would have anyway, but now you
Mm-hmm.
don't really have to rush him, especially if things are going well at the time that he's ramping up. You can kind of be keeping him on the back burner, making sure he's healthy, come in and make that push for the playoffs in the end. So the Giants definitely have improved with this Snell signing. And again, with Chapman coming in defensively and what he offers for a bat, Soler, I think, like you mentioned, is just a fun guy to see. And I think watching him hit there is going to be terrific. So, who do you have finishing second in the division?
The Diamondbacks,
Yeah.
the National League champions from last year.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know if we talked about this last week or if we talked about this when we were practicing doing these, getting them ready to release them.
Mm-hmm.
But it was talked about last year of, when they made the World Series, of Brandon Pfaadt. Is he a number three? They had that question mark. So what do they do this offseason? They go out and they added Water Rodriguez, who was the Tigers', I'll say it, ace last year.
Yeah.
I mean, he was nails in April. I mean, I don't think anybody had a better month of it. He might have even been the pitcher of the month for the American League in April. But you add him to this rotation, and he's a number three now, and you take that pressure off of him. I look back, and he wasn't great for the Red Sox in the postseason when he pitched for the Red Sox. But you slide him in as a number three in a playoff game. That's a hell of a move.
Just his
And
experience
that,
alone.
yeah. And then I think the Corbin Carroll bursting onto the scene last year, nobody saw that coming. But I mean, we all
Yeah.
knew. I mean, from what you saw, the kid was good. But doing what he
Yeah.
did last season all year, I mean, I believe, and I'm not 100% positive on this, I believe he finished second in the National League behind stolen bases, behind Acuna. That if Acuna didn't have the season he had that was historic, Corbin Carroll's in the conversation for,
Yeah.
National League MVP. He was the runaway rookie of the year. I believe it was unanimous. But him at the top of that order and the power he has, the speed, the on base, he's going to be a fun player to watch, and he's young. And then the rest of that lineup, I like Marte. Christian Walker came out last year a little bit. Jock Peterson adding that there. That's a move that, I think they made the move before the Giants got Soler. But that's
Yeah.
a move, that the Giants had to go do something to compete with the Diamondbacks. I like Gurriel. I've always liked Gurriel. Eugenio Suarez is an interesting one. I didn't see him, like, he wasn't, to me, a guy I saw going to Arizona when the Mariners talked about making him
That was
available.
early. That was
Yeah.
early.
Yeah, but it wasn't a name that I saw like, oh, Arizona, that makes sense for Suarez. But I think he's actually made a nice piece. And again, he's another guy, like I said, for Yastrzemski for the Giants. You're sliding him in right now, is projected to be the number 7 hitter.
Yeah.
Now we're talking, something I said a little bit earlier. I forget what team I said it for, where there's not many guys where I like the 8 and 9 spots. This is a lineup I like top to bottom.
They're
Alec
deep.
Thomas
They're
at 8,
deep.
Perdomo at 9. Perdomo had a
Hmm.
great playoff, if I do
Yep.
remember correctly. And then a little depth behind there, like Moreno is a great catcher hitting in the 3
Yep.
spot. They have Tucker Barnhart, who's not going to be, Moreno at the plate, but he is going to be solid behind the plate.
Yep.
Uh, and Jace Peterson as another option off the
Yep.
bench. They got a young guy, Blaze Alexander. Looks like he's going to make the team. And then the bullpen, I like Seawald. I've always been a big
Yeah.
Paul Seawald fan. I like Castro. They also have another name I didn't even mention. He's injured right now. Is Randall Grichuk.
Yeah.
Another interesting name that you can slide in off the bench and he can go. He can play outfield, give Gurriel a day off. He could give Thomas a day. He can play any outfield position, as well as he can DH and give one of those guys a day off. They go DH and he goes and plays the field.
Yeah.
It's going to help them, I think, if he can get healthy and be ready to go, whether it's opening day or somewhat after there, or even May, that we're talking about, they got depth all the way around. And
Yep.
that's what is going to make them a scary team. Do I think they can compete for the division? Not this year, but are they going to make the playoffs? Absolutely. I don't see how they
Yep.
don't. They didn't take a step back from last year, they took a step forward.
No. And I agree with you on the Diamondbacks. I wrote a piece, I think last week, in regards to 3 moves, or my bold predictions, and I think, like you mentioned, or 3 quiet moves they made to improve. They needed a number 3. They bring in Eduardo Rodriguez, who we talked about when he was with the Red Sox was frustrating as all hell because he was always going to full counts. I think sliding him in as a 3 and not a number 1 or 2 just takes that pressure off a little bit. I love Zach Gallen. Marion Kelly did well. You've got Fat. You've got Ryan Nelson or Henry that can pitch at number 5. Their bullpen is deep with Seawald, Castro, Ginkel, and even Mantiply. They're deep at pitching. We've said it already in all the other divisions. It's that depth in the pitching. Their starting lineup with Walker, who broke out last year, I think he's only going to improve because now you've added some pieces around him. Marte is getting older, but still serviceable. Suarez hitting in that lineup now with a lot of, not the Mariners lineup was bad. They just didn't have much support other than, Raleigh, France, and Rodriguez. You can slap in Suarez and hit him anywhere, and he's protected. And one name that we haven't talked about that I really like, and right now he may get more playing time due to the Randall Grichuk injury, is Jake McCarthy, another speed guy, another left-handed bat. He'll probably be that 4th outfielder to get going. He may be a DH depending on what they want to do with, between Gurriel, Thomas, whatever. They've got depth, and you mentioned it. And this team's, I've got them for 88 wins. So it's going to be very fun to see how they play. And there's always that. Do they have a hangover? How do they come out and play? But I think that they didn't sit idle. They went and got the pieces they needed. They needed right-handed pop. They grabbed a third pitcher, and then they just added Jock Peterson, who I think I wouldn't be shocked to see him hit in between 22 and 25 home runs. Not even he may play 135 games, but he's still going to be productive. So they added that slugging percentage, and that'll be big for them to kind of try to get back to where they were and try to finish what they started last year. So leads us to number 1, and we both have the same team. So why don't you go ahead and talk about them first?
Yeah, it's the Dodgers. I mean,
Yeah.
what they did, and you and I have talked about this, the fact that they went out and spent that money, but then were able to defer it for so long is just, I mean, it's mind blowing that nobody's ever done that. I mean, it has never been talked about. You sign Otani to, what did they sign him? Was it 10 years, 13 years, whatever, and they're deferring, I think it's $2 million a year until he retires. Then it's, 10 million a year after that. And the weird thing about it is that weird opt out clause in there that if the GM or the owner leave the team, I think it's
Yep.
the GM, if he gets fired, then he's free to be a free agent again. Like there's an opt out in there if the GM's gone, Otani's a free agent. And then, you're now we're talking looking at the lineup, they're projecting it to be Mookie leadoff, playing shortstop, which is another
Yeah.
interesting move altogether. I mean, the guy was a right fielder for the Red Sox, goes to the Dodgers as a right fielder. Then he played second base last year. Now all of a sudden, Gavin Lux isn't playing Gavin Lux shortstop, whether that's an injury, he's got the yips, whatever. We've talked about that and a couple
Yep.
times. Now Mookie Betts is going to be your shortstop. Granted, he came up as an infielder, but we've gone over the stats of him as a infielder. They're not as a shortstop, and they're not great. They're not bad, but they're not great. So that's an interesting move. Otani's 2, Freeman 3, Will Smith 4, Max Muncy 5, Teoscar Hernandez 6. I like Outman, and that's another piece. Like I like at
Yeah.
7 in the 7th spot. Jason Hayward had a coming out party last year. I mean, he kind of dipped off after I think with the Cubs. That 16
Coming
World
back party
Series.
because he's so old.
Yeah, yeah, he was good. I mean, that Cubs year, they won the World Series. His bat
Yeah.
was solid. But after that, he kind of just disappeared. I
Yeah.
mean, so if he can produce like he did last year, another great bat at 8. I like Lux at 9. Again, I don't know what his issue is. The depth they have is what
Yeah.
carries them. The fact that you can have Kike Hernandez who can play center field. We saw he was a great center fielder for the Red Sox.
Yeah.
He's an option. We talked about Rojas the other day, Chris Taylor, and then you got Austin Barnes still as a backup catcher. Just the
Yeah.
depth they have behind all of this talent already in the starting lineup is, I mean, any one of those 4 guys on the bench is probably an 8 or 9 hitter on any of the other teams we talked about.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
realistically, they could slide in anywhere there. The pitching is where my biggest question mark is. Right now, they're going Glass now, and they start. We didn't even talk about this yet.
Start the
Opening day
20th.
is Wednesday at 6
Yep.
a.m. They're playing in South Korea, so they play Wednesday and Thursday. They're going Glasnow and Yamamoto, game 1, game 2. And then after that, it's Bobby Miller. Gavin Stone's the number 5. I'm assuming Walker Buehler is going to be the number 4, but I did see Stone was confirmed the 5th starter today.
Yeah.
So I'm going to assume it right now. Fangraphs says Bueller's still injured. I'm going to assume he's pitching, and he'll probably be the 3 or the 4. What are you going to get from Buehler? And then on top of that, you might don't even see on here, and I'm surprised by it. James Paxton. They signed Paxton. Is he like and I said this to you right after the signing happened, and I said Kershaw's coming soon. And then I said what's going to happen is you're going to see Paxton's going to pitch the first half. He's going to get hurt or wear down because his innings going to go up, and
Yeah.
something's going to happen. Kershaw's going to come back, and he's going to replace Paxton in that rotation. And
Yeah.
that just makes them scarier because you're going to have a great Paxton. Paxton was great for the Red Sox last year in the first half.
Yeah.
But then the innings got to him, and he just dealt with injuries and was shut down for the year. But the Dodgers even the pitching depth now, even talking about it, whether if Paxton stays healthy all year, what do you
Jesus,
do?
they've got issues. They've
The
got
Stone
issues with decisions.
Stone goes to AAA. I think that's the only thing you do because Paxton and Kershaw are 1-year deals, so you can have Stone go pitch in AAA, call him back up next year, and he's back in rotation.
And still have Sheehan too.
They have so much.
They do. So I, like you, have the Dodgers. I have them winning 99 games. I think that what they did, like you mentioned, with Shohei Ohtani, is going to be interesting to see. I don't think people reacted the way they could have this year. I think they're going to be a lot of evaluating in regards to financials, how they went about it. I think we see more of this shit coming on. We haven't seen something like this since Bobby Bonilla.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very strange, but I think that the way they're built, the only question I have, because I really like their bullpen, I think, underperformed to a certain degree at times last year, but they're deep with Phillips, Gratterall, Vesia, and even the old faithful Ryan Brazier, who we know from Boston,
Joe Kelly.
and Joe Kelly. I mean, I'm going to root for Joe Kelly wherever the hell he plays. I hope he never dons the old pinstripes, but I'll always root for that guy because he is a team first guy and just absolutely love watching him throw because he loves to compete. They are deep in that their pitching is deep. And I think their pitching is deeper.
You didn't even mention Trinan. Blake Tryon's there too.
Blake Tryon's there too. Yeah, so they're just deep, and they have Daniel Hudson. I mean, they have names upon names of guys
Yarborough.
that can pitch. Yarborough, who I think will be that kind of gap guy, long inning guy. The only question I have, other than Lux, in regards to what the hell's wrong there, but I don't. It's not a big deal because you've got Kike and Taylor that could slide in there to play second, or even let Rojas play short and move Mookie. I mean, they've just got that depth. The only question I really have, and it's not a big question, but is Hayward. If his bat doesn't show back up, his defense takes care of it. But that says a lot. If that's the only concern is Jason Hayward's bat. And I did read something. I didn't read it. I saw it pop up today in between meetings that I was going to, that they were talking about Ohtani playing some in the field. Could that be for right field? I wouldn't, it all depends on his throwing and how everything's coming. But I mean, this team doesn't have a lot of questions right now. I think there's some questions that could come up in their starting rotation because Glasnow, as we brought up at depth in regards to how much can he handle? He'll probably come out this year and throw 32 starts and just win the Cy Young. But, there's some questions there between that. Yamamoto, how does he come out? You wrote an article. Could he be a bust? There's some questions there, but they have so much friggin' depth that it's just replaced. And I'm going to be very interested to watch this team and how Dave Roberts navigates all the decisions he has. And they're good decisions, right? But they're decisions that can make a difference. So he doesn't have problems where he doesn't have enough guys. He has almost too many at this point in time. So it'll be very interesting. And like I said, I have the the Dodgers winning 99 games. So they'll win the West. As a little recap, we both agreed Dodgers, then Diamondbacks. And then we both had the Giants at 3. After this news, I had them at 4. After the news, they were separated by 1 game. I bumped them up. They will be 3rd. And then we agreed the Padres with a winning record at 4. And then the Rockies, being the Rockies at the bottom of the division. So I think best we keep our predictions for Cy Young, Rookie of the Year, MVP, Manager of the Year, to tie in with the American League as a separate beginning part of another episode where we're already, we're pushing you folks to 2 hours again, but there was a lot of stuff to talk about tonight and really excited for Wednesday morning. I cannot wait to see baseball back and to have it mean something. And also just the 2 teams that are playing. It's going to be a lot of fun. We will get together and record again next week. We'll cover, just like we did tonight, the American League, East, Central, and West. And then we'll follow that up, and baseball's going to be here. Instead of talking about the spring showcase or breakout, we'll probably touch upon the first few games of the year, take 15 minutes to kind of talk about that, and then we'll dive right into these predictions and see if there's any more breaking news. Maybe Montgomery will sign next week while we're doing that. So that was awesome tonight to have that happen. I did not expect the Giants. I really thought he'd go to the Astros, Snell, but that'll be interesting. We can hit on that next week. So any last thoughts?
2 episodes into recording this podcast, and we're getting hit with breaking news as we're recording. I mean,
yeah.
How do you not love that? I mean, just adds to talk about. It makes us change things on the fly. Except, I guess I had the Giants 3rd in the division regardless, but made me think about moving them 2nd for a little bit. I had to go back and forth to Fangraphs and really think about it, but nothing ended up changing. But
yeah,
I like
just makes that division that much deeper. Really, we talked about the Central being tough. I mean, with that move now, I think the West is probably the deepest from in the top 4 out of all these divisions in the National League right now. And that's going to be a very interesting very interesting discussion when we get into playoffs, and that'll be once the season starts. That first week, we'll hit that and talk about playoff teams because that NL West is going to be a shootout. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. But yeah, I really appreciate everyone listening. CJ, I had a lot of fun shooting the shit, going back and forth. But like we mentioned, this is the second episode. The third episode will broadcast and air next week. And that'll be all about the AL East, Central, and West. And we'll hit on the first few games out played in Korea. Really appreciate everyone joining us. And I hope everyone likes and subscribes and hits us up. We appreciate it. And we'll see you all next week.
See everybody next week.